The greatest statistical anomaly, the most dominant physical force in league history, did the unthinkable. He flexed his powers over the front office of the Philadelphia 76ers and forced his way to the city of Los Angeles. He wanted to join the team with the greatest 1-2 punch, Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. They had no choice but to finalize the most lopsided trade we've ever seen. The player that just won the last 3 MVP awards was traded for Archie Clark, Jerry Chambers, and Darryl Imhoff. That was how the Wilt Chamberlain era of the Los Angeles Lakers started. It was full of iconic moments, tragic defeats, and controversy. With the help of CLNS NBA History Storytellers, we're going to present both sides of this legendary, but yet polarizing era. 1968 was the summer of Wilt Chamberlain. He couldn't help but to dominate the sports tabloids. In the postseason, the Philadelphia 76ers were expected to win their second straight title. They were coming off the most dominant season up to that point and were once again the best team in the NBA. But in the conference finals, they became the first team to lose a 3-1 series lead in the playoffs. To add insult to injury, they lost at the hands of his biggest rival, Bill Russell and the Boston Celtics. It was a humiliating defeat and all eyes were on Chamberlain. In Game 7, he took only one shot for the entire second half. After the game, he used his platform to take shots at his head coach, Alex Hannum. He claimed that he ordered him to not shoot the ball. Alex, on the other hand, called that claim bogus. It was an ugly way to end his tenure with the Sixers. He already made it known that he was going to play for another team after the conclusion of the playoffs. Now it was time to start the final chapter of his career. That was when the first super team was created. 3 of the greatest individual talents were on the same squad. Since this was the first time a team like this was formed, people didn't know what to expect. Were they going to win every game? Would anyone have a fair shot at beating the Lakers? The expectations were through the roof. Anything short of a championship would be considered a huge disappointment. You couldn't blame anyone for thinking that way. In fact, a Philadelphia sports writer joked that Ronald Reagan and Doris Day could play the other 2 positions for the Lakers. Everyone agreed that on paper, they had the potential of being the greatest team of all time and a dynasty. The biggest issue was trying to figure out how to make everything work. For those familiar with the 1969 Lakers, you know that this was the root of all the locker room drama. The topic of discussion was the beef between Wilt and his coach, Butch Van Breda Kolff. It got to the point where the Herald Examiner was known as Wilt's paper and the LA Times was known as Butch's paper. The coach would rant publicly about whether to play a star center at the high or low post, that he needed to be more willing to jumpstart their fast break offense instead of forcing them to play a half-court style. On the other side of the locker room, there was Wilt, giving his rebuttal every time. That brought a lot of instability and it made Chamberlain even less inclined to compromise on this issue. So as the season went on, the Lakers had no offensive identity. In fact, Sports Illustrated called their offense dull, slow, and that they didn't work well together. That explains why the Lakers averaged 10 points per game less from the previous season and finished with the second slowest pace.
They weren't on the same page during the regular season and the playoffs. Why couldn't Wilt and Van Breda Kolff get along?
2 towering personalities. Butch Van Breda Kolff was one of the more interesting individuals I ever encountered in all the years I covered the league. He was a very forthright individual and a constant. Wilt lived by his own rules. Remember, the night that Wilt Chamberlain scored the 100 points on March 3rd, 1962, playing for the Philadelphia Warriors, he got in a car with 2 of the rival Knicks and they drove back to New York where he lived. So you can imagine how many practices he may have missed or was late to or sleptwalked through when he was playing for Philadelphia, when he was living in New York. He and Butch, it was almost inevitable, that there would be some kind of friction when he wouldn't do what Butch wanted.
The lack of chemistry, communication, and willingness to adapt to each other played a factor in their slow start. But in the NBA, talent can overcome many obstacles, and the Big Three started imposing their will. In the 60s, the Lakers were always missing that one dominant center to help them get over the hump. They finally had that missing piece, and there were moments where he proved that he was still the best player in the world. Did you know that there were 2 games that season where he scored over 60 points? Against the Cincinnati Royals, he had 60 points on 61% shooting, 21 rebounds, and 5 blocks. but nothing was bigger than what he did against the Phoenix Suns. When we say that he was the most dominant force in history, it's because of moments like these. He had 66 points on 83% shooting, 27 rebounds, and 4 assists. That's the most efficient 60-point performance ever. But that's not all. There was another game when he unofficially blocked 23 shots against the Suns. Or what about the game against the Detroit Pistons when he had 34 points on a perfect 14-14 shooting, 27 rebounds, 11 blocks, and 7 assists? It was games like these that makes you wonder, were they better off revolving the team around the 4-time MVP? Should he have been the focal point of the offense instead of being the team's third scoring option? Even though they were trying to figure things out on the fly, they still had a rather successful season. They won 55 games, which was tied for the second best record in the NBA. If it wasn't for Jerry West missing 21 games, there is no question that they could have posted over 60 wins. Wilt's per game averages were also MVP worthy numbers. He averaged 20.5 points on 58% shooting, 21.1 rebounds, and 4.5 assists per game. He finished first in rebounds and field goal percentage. But here's the crazy part. He didn't receive a single vote for the MVP. He was completely snubbed from the ballot. Remember, the players were the ones that voted during this time. This gives us an idea of how his peers felt about Wilt forming a super team. They were against it, and this was their way of expressing their true feelings. The only way he could respond back was with a championship. In the playoffs, it seemed like something clicked. In the semifinals, they lost the first 2 games at home against the San Francisco Warriors. With their backs against the wall, their play went to another level, and they went on a dominant stretch. They won 8 of their next 9 games. Wilt had a couple of 20-20 games during that span. Jerry West was in the middle of his greatest playoff run, and the Lakers were starting to get some real productivity from their bench. It seemed like everything was starting to come together at the perfect time, because in the finals, they were facing a team that caused the Big Three so much pain. Jerry West and Elgin Baylor lost to this team 5 times in the finals. Wilt had lost to them 6 times in the playoffs. It was time for payback, and the Celtics had never looked so vulnerable. They were old and tired. They only won 48 games that season. To add even more motivation, Bill Russell and Sam Jones were both going to be retiring. What better way to end their careers by sending them home with an L? As the finals began, Jerry West completely took over. He had the most dominant start to a final series ever. In Game 1, he exploded for 53 points on 52% shooting, 10 assists, and 3 rebounds. Then in Game 2, he followed that up with 41 points on 55% shooting, 8 assists, and 3 rebounds. Behind his explosive play, they had a 2-0 series lead. Wilt had never seen one of his teammates perform like this. They were in a great position to win the series. All they needed to do was steal a game on the road. That opportunity presented itself in Game 4. After another dominant 40-point performance by Jerry West, it seemed like the Lakers sealed the game. They were seconds away from pushing their series lead 3-1. They had a 1-point lead with 7 seconds left and the ball. However, after receiving an inbound pass along the sideline, Elgin Baylor was controversially ruled to have stepped out of bounds. In the following possession, this happened.
5 seconds to Sam, his 20-foot jumper, good!
Sam Jones hit an off-balance shot at the buzzer. The power of the Leprechauns was real. The series was eventually pushed to a 7th game. At that point, you couldn't escape the obvious question, when was Wilt Chamberlain going to step up? There were 3 games in that series where he scored in single digits. The Celtics did a great job of containing Elgin Baylor. He shot under 40% for the series. Wilt needed to be the one to give Jerry West some kind of help. The Lakers were already lacking depth, and they were too star heavy for this team to be a one-man show. Was he going to show up for Game 7? The pressure was on after the Lakers did something inexplicable.
While warming up before Game 7, I don't remember who it was, but somebody saw a memo, piece of paper on the right up against the court on the floor, and picked it up, and it was a memo to the to staff about what was going to happen when they won the game that night. And it was the balloons would come down from whatever, the USC marching band would come in from one side and playing Happy Days Are Here Again. I mean, to that detail.
The Celtics were the aggressors. At the start of the fourth quarter, they had a 15-point lead. It was up to Jerry West once again to pick up the pieces. He helped his team come all the way back. In the biggest game of his career, with all that pressure on his shoulders, he had the game of his life. He posted a 40-point triple-double in a Game 7 of the finals. We're talking 42 points on 48% shooting, 13 rebounds, and 12 assists. All he needed was one of his star teammates to step up. However, Elgin had another off-shooting night, and Wilt only took 8 shot attempts. His lack of aggressiveness frustrated his coach, and he reached his breaking point. With about 5 minutes left in the game, he injured his knee. He went to the bench to get some treatment and was ready to enter shortly after. But his coach refused. He told him straight up, "We don't need you." In the biggest moment, their differences cost them big time.
And now we get to the fateful Game 7 in 1969. And Wilt, I forget what owie he got. He got an owie, something happened.
Right.
To a lower limb. And he's on the bench. They're down. The Celtics are on their way to the victory. But they start a comeback. And instrumental in the comeback was Mel Counts, who was replacing Wilt in the lineup when he was on the bench. He says he's feeling better and he wants to get back in the game. And Butch wouldn't put him back in. Counts was going well.
Chris, with Counts in the pivot, the Lakers are running a little bit more. They're getting the ball down a little bit faster and beating the Celtics down on defense.
Butch didn't like Wilt. He wanted to be able, now my amateur psychologist, and knowing Butch and knowing about Butch, he wanted to be able to stand and win without Wilt. He didn't want to give Wilt, he wanted to win, and he was hoping he could get it, thought he could get it done, without Wilt. And obviously that wasn't the case.
He watched Bill Russell and the Celtics win another title. It was the most heartbreaking loss of their careers. For some reason, Wilt was unable to put together one vintage performance in the finals. For the series, he averaged 11.7 points per game. That's nearly less than half of what he averaged for the regular season. If he would have produced his normal averages, they should have had no problems winning that series. But he was not capable of enforcing his will against a player that was on his way out. Yes, they're going to have other opportunities to win a title, but their chance for revenge was gone forever. In the following season, he knew exactly what he needed to do to get his team back on track. He was going to be the aggressor, and he started looking like the Big Dipper again. In the first 9 games of the season, he was averaging 32.2 points on 58% shooting and 20.6 rebounds per game. There were 2 instances where he posted over 40 points and 20 rebounds. There was no question that he felt like he had something to prove. Unfortunately, everything quickly came to an end. He suffered a ruptured tendon in his knee and missed 70 games. This was the first and only time in his career that he suffered a major injury that forced him to miss more than 7 games. This means that he was going to miss valuable time forming chemistry with his teammates. He came back in the 80th game of the season. The Lakers were going to have to make major adjustments after playing behind Jerry West all year long. In the semifinals, it was obvious that they were having trouble. They were facing a 3-1 series deficit against the Phoenix Suns. All 3 losses were over double digits. With their backs against the wall, Jerry West and Chamberlain had arguably their best game together as a duo. Jerry had 36 points on 48% shooting and 18 assists. Wilt added 36 points on 60% shooting, along with 14 rebounds and 9 blocks. They were later able to force a Game 7, and Wilt proved that he was more than capable of coming through in big moments. He had the dominant stat line of 30 points on 61% shooting, 27 rebounds, 11 blocks, and 6 assists. They grew a lot together as a unit, and they had their mojo back. They swept the Atlanta Hawks in the conference finals, and they returned to the biggest stage. This time, they were facing the New York Knicks. They were led by the MVP, Willis Reed. It was going to be the start of the next great rivalry of the 70s, and this was a classic series. For the first 4 games, 2 of them were decided in overtime, and another one was decided by 2 points. It was a back and forth battle, but their odds of winning the title bursted wide open after Willis Reed suffered a severe thigh injury in the opening minutes of Game 5. They let that game slip away and lost by 7 points, but it was obvious what the game plan was from this point forward. Give the ball to Wilt and get out of his way. In Game 6, he had the greatest finals performance of his career. He had 45 points on 74% shooting and 27 rebounds. He made history in more ways than one. This is the most efficient 40-point game in finals history, and it's the only time that a player has recorded over 40 points and 25 rebounds in the finals. Behind his historic performance, the Lakers won by 22 points. Without their best player and the only player that could guard Wilt straight up, they seemed in great position to win Game 7. But we all remember what happened. Willis Reed came walking down the tunnel. He made the first 2 baskets, and the Knicks used that fuel to completely overwhelm the Lakers. Walt Frazier had an incredible performance, and they had no response. They lost in Game 7 the finals for the second straight year. But as you watch the game, you'll quickly realize that Willis Reed was playing on one good leg. He was in obvious pain. It makes you wonder, why didn't Wilt impose his will against him? Why didn't he duplicate his Game 6 performance?
They played the rest of that game from the moment that he got hurt with no one over 6'7" on the floor. They had Dave Stallworth, they had the Busher, who was 6'7", they had Busher 6'6", Bradley. Phil Jackson was hurt that year. He didn't play. He was out. He played the whole season, I think, on the injured list. They had Nate Bowman, but they didn't put him in. Okay? And they came back and won. So what happened in Game 7? Wilt was a peculiar psychological study. And what he was thinking or not thinking in Game 7, but he was never a factor.
Were there times where he just checked out?
Yes, he did. That picked a funny time if that's one of those nights. Now at this point he's 12 years into his career, but still quite viable. I mean, don't worry,
Yeah.
But some nights it was there, but that he didn't show up in Game 5 and he didn't show up in Game 7.
The numbers say that he did his part. He finished with 21 points on 63% shooting and 24 rebounds. But the numbers never tell the whole story. His mentality was being questioned again. Considering the circumstances, it's fair to say that he underperformed. It shouldn't be taken lightly that his super team lost 2 out of 3 games to an opponent that was without their best player. In the 1970-71 season, the story of the Lakers was injuries. Elgin Baylor missed all but 2 games due to an Achilles injury. Then, with 11 games left in the season, Jerry West suffered a torn ligament in his right knee. He had to sit out the rest of the year and would miss the upcoming postseason. All the pressure was put on Wilt to carry this team, and their opponents were putting all the attention on him. In the semifinals against the Chicago Bulls, he had his least efficient series of his career. He averaged just under 42%. However, the Lakers were deep enough to force a Game 7. That was when Wilt had a monster showing. He posted 25 points on 58% shooting, 19 rebounds, and 9 assists. All things considered, it was impressive that they reached the conference finals without 2 other big 3, but they were no match for the Milwaukee Bucks. All eyes were on the matchup between Chamberlain and Kareem, but this wasn't a fair fight. The Bucks were in the middle of one of the most dominant seasons of all time, while the Lakers looked nothing like the team everyone envisioned. They got dismantled in 5 games. After a disappointing end to the year, it was fair to wonder if they would ever win the title. They answered all the doubters in a major way in the following year. For many people, this is arguably the greatest single season that we've ever seen from a team. The 72 Lakers won 69 games. They won a mind-blowing 33 straight games. It's a record that still holds today. What was the secret to this incredible turnaround? There were many factors. Hiring Bill Sharman as the head coach is a big one. He helped transform them into an incredibly explosive offense. Then there was Jim McMillan, who replaced Elgin Baylor in the starting lineup after he retired. Due to his youth and versatility, he was a much better fit for the fast-paced offense Bill was looking to run. All that needs to be said. But this video is about Wilt Chamberlain, and we must highlight his enormous contributions.
And a coach got to him that had never gotten to him before. Bill Sharman comes in and invents the morning shoot-around. And what? He invented the morning shoot-around. He's got to persuade Wilt. That wasn't Wilt. Wilt would get up at 11 o'clock, Seriously. He persuaded Wilt to go along with the program, which people were amazed. And Wilt decided to dedicate himself to leading the league and not just being a good beater, shooting percentage. How do you do that? Well, you don't take shots you can't make. And pretty much all Wilt wanted to do from then on were finger rolls and tips and dunks. And he cut his shot percentage way down. And he also wanted to start a fast break, and he threw outlet passes, which he had never thrown. So that 71-72 Lakers, they won the 33 straight games from December to January, and we're one of the great teams, and they won 68 games, one of the great teams in NBA history, 69. Yeah, and Wilt was instrumental in that.
It's not easy to tell a player that's at the tail end of their careers to reinvent their game, but to his credit, he accepted his new role and he never gave any pushback for not averaging a certain amount of points. To prove how easygoing he was, this is what Gail Goodrich said in an episode of ESPN Up Close in 1999. Wilt probably made more adjustments and sacrifice than anybody else on that team. End of quote. It was clear that they didn't need a lot from him on the scoring end. This was his first time in his career that he didn't average over 20 points per game in a season. But his real value came on defense. He was the league's best rebounder, he blocked a crap load of shots, and he had the league's highest defensive win shares. He was easily the game's best rim protector, and that was an important asset to have during this time. The rest of the league must have thought so, as it finished third in MVP voting. They were finally reaching their potential, and their hopes for a championship never felt so real. But it wasn't going to be easy. They needed to go through the defending champions in the conference finals. Wilt's assignment was to contain the MVP, and he had one of the greatest individual seasons ever. Kareem averaged 34.8 points per game on 57% shooting. The key to this series was stopping him. Kareem got the first laugh. The Bucks won Game 1 by 22 points. Then in Game 2, Kareem went for 40 points on 58% shooting. The Lakers escaped with a 1-point victory, but it was too close of a call. Wilt needed to do something to give the MVP some trouble. For the rest of the series, he didn't let his rival do anything he wanted. He never shot over 44% for the rest of the way. Game 5 was his finest defensive performance. He forced Kareem to 28 points on 39% shooting. There are very few players that have been able to block Kareem's skyhook, but in Game 6, it was reported that he blocked his skyhook 3 straight times. It was also reported that he took over in the fourth quarter. He finished with 20 points on 67% shooting, 24 rebounds, and 10 blocks. This was the key to their victory, and they were able to return to the finals. For the second time, they were facing the New York Knicks. All year long, Wilt didn't have to worry about scoring. They had plenty of capable scorers. But in the playoffs, something curious happened. Jerry West was off. He was suffering a major shooting slump. In the finals, he couldn't get anything going. For the series, he averaged 33% from the field. In order to avoid a disaster end to their historic season, Wilt Chamberlain needed to step up. He answered the call and had a major impact. In 3 of the 5 games, he recorded over 20 points and 20 rebounds. Let's not forget that he was 35 years old at the time. He had a lot of miles and a lot of wear and tear, but he went above and beyond. He averaged nearly 47 minutes per game for that playoff run. None of it mattered. He led his team to a championship and was awarded the Finals MVP. For all the sacrifices he made, for the way he stepped up in the playoffs, it was well deserved. After all these years, this whole experiment was finally worth it. In the final year of his career, he did what he was known for doing, breaking records. He averaged 13.2 points per game on 72.7% shooting. That is the second highest field goal percentage for a single season ever. He also led the league in rebounds with an 18.6 average. On top of that, he was selected to the All-NBA First Team Defense and finished 4th in MVP voting. Until the very end, he remained an extremely impactful player. The Lakers won 60 games following the same formula they established the previous year. But this time, the advanced age of Wilt and Jerry finally caught up to them. He was able to reach the finals for the 4th time in 5 years since joining the Lakers. After facing a 3-1 series deficit against the New York Knicks, he was going to go down swinging. In the final game of his career, he posted 23 points on 56% shooting and 21 rebounds. It was his highest scoring game of the playoffs, but it wasn't enough. The Lakers lost the series and Wilt walked off the court for the final time. In retrospect, we can say this about his tenure in LA. He was arguably the most valuable player for one of the greatest teams in league history. His contributions to the 1972 Lakers allows many of us to view his time with the team as a success. There's a reason why his jersey number is hanging in the rafters. On the other hand, he left some championships on the table, and it's fair to say that he was a major reason why. That is always going to be a part of the legacy of one of the most polarizing athletes ever. But what about you all? How do you view his time with the Lakers? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.